My name's Naomi Hutchens. I live in downtown Fairbanks, Alaska. I'm a BFA student at UAF, concentrating on digital art and printmaking. My BFA show will be this April at Wall Street Art Company. The goal of these images is to show how technology and transportation are part of human nature and how they serve to connect us and bring us new experiences. It's tentatively titled Wheel of Life. My family moved to Fairbanks when I was a baby. I went to a technical high school that didn't have any traditional art classes at all, so I ended up taking things like welding and arts and AV. I really enjoyed layering photos on top of each other to make interesting compositions that couldn't actually exist in real life. Above all, I just try to keep my art fun and try not to take myself too seriously and just enjoy what I'm doing. But I do want to make art that has a greater purpose. I call this piece Making Wishes. We all have wishes for what the Polaris building could be if it weren't a dilapidated, unsafe eyesore that has been vacant for 20 years. On top of the digital photo of the building, I've layered several digital line drawings of someone blowing bubbles. When I was 19, I moved to Miami to just get away from Alaska for a while. That's where I bought my first motorcycle. Don't worry, I wasn't riding in shorts and t-shirt. The motorcycle changes your perspective on things because it's such a small piece of technology that's traveling incredibly fast. It makes the rest of the world seem like it's standing still. And there's nothing between you and nature. You're right there in the middle of the world. No windows, no doors. That's also where I got in my motorcycle accident. I was run off the road by a crazy Miami driver. This is the piece called Hellbent. It's a birch woodcut that I made for Sarah and Kat's The Witching Hour show at the UAF gallery. I used jagged lines and kind of bold cutouts to create a sense of this very graphic, stylized, fast-moving Grim Reaper, I guess, with a deer skull or a caribou skull. I'm not sure which it is. It's in my yard. And I kind of want to portray this sense of danger that you have to think about as a motorcyclist, that's always there. I also want my art to represent the time I spent on the West Coast through California, Arizona, and New Mexico. This is a water tower you might recognize from Alcatraz Island. It really had an impact on me and made me appreciate the water tower downtown in Fairbanks. This is an image I've been working on. It's not finished yet. It's going to have some orange on the right side of the building. This is one of my favorite motorcycle roads, Phillips Field. It has some really nice steady curves back and forth and some really beautiful railroad structures and trains right alongside the river as well. Through my travels to Arizona, I was able to go to Antelope Canyon. Beautiful outcropping of red stone that has been carved away by liquid, which kind of inspired some of my liquid simulations in Blender. This is one that's simulating a paint splash coming, kind of emulating off of this sphere with some enormous metallic or mirrored surfaces behind it that are reflecting the shape itself from different angles. This paint splash is one that was testing the limits of my computer, but it's definitely something that I'd like to experiment more with. My dog's name is Barry Allen. He's the fastest dog alive. He and I run at least 20 blocks through downtown Fairbanks every day, so he's definitely an inspiration of mine. I made this dog model to practice my rigging and animation skills, again with mirrored surfaces, this time with a particle system. This one, Moon Spirit I call it, the dog has a metallic shader on it, a metallic material that's reflecting the light of the moon, and it's a nice contrast, I think, to the diffuse surfaces of the trees and the rock outcropping. I also wanted to make this animation loop so that as one dog leaves the frame, another dog is entering the frame, so it loops seamlessly. I also chose to emphasize some of the low poly quadratic and triangular shapes that are characteristic of 3D art. The California desert is really interesting and almost alien to me, with the different kinds of trees and wildlife. The stark red stone that's found in the deserts against the bright sky, especially in places here like Meteor Crater, really influenced some of my work. I like this early animation I made called Blast Off. This rocket ship is one that I love. I can't explain it, but I've made several images from that rocket. Here's another one more recently of Red Rover. It's a rigged rover that I modeled and used a displacement canvas to make it look like it's making tracks through soft ground. This is a line-a-cut that I made my first printmaking semester. I call it Boom Shakalaka. I really like this image because of the natural shape of the cloud. It's almost tree-like, but it also has references to human activity. And I left a lot of noise to kind of give a sense of this explosion of sound and force and light, and the colors, of course, are reminiscent of the Arizona desert. I've used the mushroom cloud shape in other works as well, once in a bronze cuttlefish casting, and once as a digital painting. I've enjoyed every type of printing method that I've tried so far. Silkscreen has its advantages. It's different from relief, where you're using a brayer to roll on color. Different from Italio, where you're rubbing color into grooves and textures. Silkscreen, you're pushing ink through a stencil onto a surface. So you can get really thin papers like this one, and really defined lines. But it can have its frustrations as well, and sometimes doesn't get quite as much detail as you'd like. I was thinking of the poker flat research range while designing this print. I really love circles and spheres, especially concentric circles. I think that there's something about it that just draws you into the image and adds a sense of depth. I feel especially proud of a new animation or video when the image is so mesmerizing that you just want to watch it over and over again. I think art can be found just about anywhere you look, even on the street. Man-made structures and objects, I think, are really striking. And I think that even street litter can be quite beautiful sometimes. Living in a state as expansive as Alaska, I think roads and planes and trains are very important to us. They connect our communities, and motorcycles especially, I think, connect me to my surroundings in a way that no other vehicle does. They make me pay attention more, and they come up quite a bit in my work. I've made motorcycles in just about every medium. I've represented motorcycles in my prints, digital models, cast silver box, and some abstract oil paintings. Movement and a sense of time is something I'm always trying to capture. I've experimented with long exposures to try to get a sense of that movement and the time aspect. Brightly saturated colors are something I'm always drawn to. My mom and I are both synesthetes. Fun fact. So I really appreciate bright, vibrant colors and try to use them whenever I can, especially blues and yellows and reds, purples. I'm much more drawn to colors and textures, specifically in landscapes, than I am to figures. I try to pull colors from my surroundings and use those, especially in my monotype prints. This is probably the most complicated print I've made so far. It's called Island Getaway. I made this for some friends of mine that were living in Hawaii at the beginning of the year. You might remember the event this is referencing. It was when an accidental text message alert was sent to everybody in Hawaii that a nuclear missile threat was inbound to Hawaii and that they need seek immediate shelter. My immediate thought was to my friends who were living there and how they must have felt at the time. It's a big rainbow rolled print on several block reduction woodcut. So the rainbow roll was applied, printed, and then the sky was carved away, leaving the sun for its own rainbow roll. Then a second block was applied, not with this green color, but with a black and purple rainbow roll of its own. Then lastly, a copper plate intaglio etching was applied to the blank space carved out. I added a black outline to the Hawaii letters so that they would be more readable from afar. I'll wrap this up by just giving you a quick tour of my digital studio. So this is Blender. This is the program I've been using this semester, and this is one of my simpler animations, my Bear Armature. This animation is 220 frames long, which means it's about 9 seconds. This is the timeline down here at the bottom. This is kind of how you navigate through the scene. You see this in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see the colored directional lines marking kind of like a mathematical grid. You've got your X, Y, and Z axes that also show up on the grid here. And you can see my selected object is outlined by this pink line. These other objects in the scenes are lights and cameras. So this is an area light that you can see points directly at my Bear armature. And you can see you can change the size, you can change the color and the strength to affect how the object appears. This object is a camera so that you can look through your viewport at what the final animation will look like. If you're familiar with photography, you can see some similarities with your shutter speed, your f-stops, your focal length. And this is just another lamp, point lamp, that acts more like a candle than a spot lamp. You can see in material mode here that I've got some materials placed on my objects. You can see you can change the color, the subsurface scattering, its metallic qualities, if it needs to be diffuse, how rough it is, if it has a sheen. You can do all of that here in your material settings. See, my bear has two different textures, two different materials, a skin material and a hair material. So one last thing here, this is the armature, so the kind of the skeleton that I rigged to control the skin or the mesh of the bear. You can see it can wave. Thanks for watching! And yeah, here's the final result.